Hello YouTube, my name is Zach, and today I'm going to be doing my second patron request video. This particular video was requested by Factories Far Away, who is one of my patron subscribers who also takes voice lessons from me. In case you're ever wondering how you get to request a video, well, there is a level on my Patreon page, which is www.patreon.com/Zach Ansley. I'll put a link in the description, where you can sign up for a certain tier that will allow you to request a video. So if you are ever interested in doing so, please feel free to. I'd love to take the request. I have a huge list of people and songs and analyses to do, but if you do the Patreon, then you get like right at the front of the line. Anyway, so today is definitely going to be a little bit of a challenge for me. First off, it's the first analysis of a girl singer that I've done on this channel. And of course, I have experience teaching male and female voices. But this is going to be particularly challenging for me because I'm going to have to say some things that might be a little bit controversial. Not because it's offensive or anything like that, but I'm just going to be dealing with some topics with singing that in modern society have been getting really heavily challenged and scrutinized, and the academic community is kind of trying to catch up and things. So some of the things that I might say might come across as maybe a bit harsh, not on the singer, but just on some of the mentalities and mindsets that are starting to develop. But keep in mind, and this is for people who've never seen my videos, and this is for those of you who watch my videos all the time, this is strictly based upon pedagogic principles and what we kind of know now in the academic community to be true. Of course, that's malleable and it's apt to change at any time, but as of now, I go by the things that I know, according to journals, are basically considered to be scientific and true, and all this is based around the idea of vocal health and vocal sustainability. So with that in mind, this analysis is going to be of Hayley Williams of Paramore. This song is Still Into You, and this particular analysis is from her performance at the Grammys. And I hope you all enjoy this. It's going to be interesting, I think, to do an analysis of a female singer instead of a male. This is the first time I've done it. I hope that if you've never seen my videos and you're drawn to this video because of your fandom of Hayley Williams, that you will understand that this is not intended to be any kind of knock on her or super praise of her. I try to be as absolutely objective as possible in this analysis. So, without further ado, here we go. This is Still Into You.
Can't count the years on one hand that we've been together. I need the other one to hold you, make you feel better.
Okay, so right off the bat, I hear a lot of really good things and some things that aren't quite so good. First off, she does a great job of singing on the voice. She doesn't do any of this like covered airy stuff that so many singers like to do these days. Her singing is very much on the voice, very well aligned. It's clear and it's healthy. It sounds very healthy. So what I mean by that is that it doesn't sound forced, it doesn't sound pushed, it doesn't sound like she's doing anything too outside the norm of what she would do when she speaks. And in my view, and in most of the academic community's view, if you are within the framework of your speaking voice, you're good to go. Like if you're not doing something too far out of line. Now, however, there is one thing that she does that I take issue with from a health perspective. I think it all sounds really cool, but as far as the healthiness of it, she uses a lot of fry register. Like at the beginning of her phrases, she'll kind of do this thing where it's like that. That is an example of her dipping down into her fry register. And so the fry register is the register that sits below the modal register. So you've got the fry register, the modal register, and you got the falsetto. Now for women, that's head voice, not necessarily falsetto. Sometimes the terms are interchangeable, but for simplicity's sake, I like to say that men have falsetto, women have head voice. And because women also tend to have, that will not tend to, they can have a register above the head voice called the whistle voice. And, there are some guys who claim to have whistle voice, but I've never seen a male with like the sound of a whistle voice be able to sustain it past like age, I don't know, 13 or 14. I mean, I think I may have seen one video of a guy do it, but anyway, beside the point. The fry register was for a long time predominantly used as a way for bass singers to imply low notes in a choir. So like if you're singing and you're singing bass or baritone and the note's too low for you and you're with a group of other singers, instead of actually singing the note, you can just fry. And of course it sounds inconsistent. You can just fry it and it just creates in a group an implication of a tone. The fry register is actually created by the cricoarytenoid muscle loosening and the folds just kind of like flatly loosening on one another and just sort of like I guess for lack of a better word, they just kind of jiggle. They don't hold together and create the vibratory function that they typically do when you speak. And doing it in short bursts and for small amounts of time for men in particular is completely fine, is completely healthy. There's a lot of controversy surrounding about its use with women, though. I know that modern pedagogy is trying to better understand the effect that it has on women, but for the longest time, the sort of overarching idea in the academic community is that using the fry too much in the female voice is damaging, because making the folds vibrate with such low frequency is sort of not what the typical structure of the female vocal mechanism is set up to do. And like I said earlier, this is all kind of could be controversial, and there's still some differing viewpoints that are still being developed on it. I'm just kind of giving you what I know as of now. We haven't found a way to be able to say with certainty that women can fry sustainably. Now, it's something that's become very more recent and modern. For a long time, women just stayed away from their fry register, and now it's starting to become more popular, not just in singing but also in speech. You're starting to hear women fry a lot more in their speech. So there's just a ton of study going on with it right now, and there's a ton of controversy. I've heard the idea that trying to imply that women can't do fry is like trying to keep them from feeling like they can speak. And then there's some people who counter that argument by saying that, well, women who try to use a fry register are just trying to sound like men. I mean, it's just super controversial, and so I'm not going to put my 2 cents in that sense, either way. I think that it's kind of a petty, ridiculous argument. My most important thing is it healthy or not? I don't care what sound you make, as long as it's something that's sustainable. So we don't know at this point. The like I said, the long time idea has been that the fry register for women is not sustainable, but the studies are being brought back up, and it's starting to kind of be somewhat more accepted. And so there's a little more to it than that. I want to go into the video a bit more. I don't want to just sit here and talk about this specific issue. I did look a little bit into Hayley Williams' background, and she studied under Brett Manning. And Brett Manning is a voice teacher who is very well known for teaching pop singers. And I've listened to several of the singers that he's taught, and I found that a lot of them carry similar bad habits. They use a lot of glottal onsets, and which is something I'm going to get to, but Hayley uses almost exclusively glottal onsets in this video when she begins words with vowels. They also tend to use a lot of fry register, and they tend to push a lot and have pretty high breathing. They don't have the low breath, and there's an example of that later in the song where you can hear her breathe, and I'll sort of show the difference. But I think that Brett Manning, as a teacher, encourages his singers to use a lot of fry and encourages teachers to use glottal onsets. And from a strictly pedagogical and health-based perspective, the fry register is okay with men, the fry register is probably okay with women, but teaching glottal onsets is not. Now, he may not teach glottal onsets, but when I start hearing multiple singers of his studio and under his study have the same habits, that's when I start thinking that's something that he coaches. So anyway, let's keep going. I'll give you some more examples of that kind of support what I'm thinking here. Let's go.
It's not a walk in the park to love each other.
When she does the ends of her phrase, when she goes each other, she does that, that kind of is idiomatic of certain styles. If I'm not mistaken, she kind of has like a punk rock or pop punk background, and I know that kind of tail off is sort of like an idiom or an anachronism of pop punk, pop rock, punk rock kind of thing. So that is kind of the reasoning behind it. I don't think it's particularly damaging or harmful or anything it's just an affect that she's adding on to the end of the phrase, and there's no big deal. I mean, there are some operatic singers that scoop around between notes, and some people think it's sloppy, some people think it's cool. I personally think that if you're sliding from note to note, it's perfectly fine because it helps the chords close as long as you don't sound like you're drunk when you're doing it. So yeah, some little affect like that's no big deal. I'm more concerned about her glottal stuff. Her tone, she sounds like she's singing evenly. It sounds like it's somewhat well supported. It sounds to me like she's also doing some of this speak singing thing, which I think I've talked about before, and that's kind of like a Broadway thing where you'll speak and you'll kind of gravitate around pitches, and the emphasis is more on the rhythmic element of it, which would make sense because what's being played, the texture of the guitar is very rhythmic. It's not a lot of strumming or anything like that at this point. So her kind of doing that pseudo staccato kind of bouncy sort of sound, it makes sense in the overall texture of the song being performed. So that's completely fine. she's not singing in a particular legato style, but that doesn't fit what's going on right now. So this is one of those cases, one of the rare cases where I would say not singing in a legato style is completely fine.
But when our fingers interlock, can't deny you're worth it. And after all this time,
one thing that I really like upon reviewing this is that she's got almost no tension. Like, you can see that she keeps her face like really calm, really relaxed. Her embouchures don't get too wide. She doesn't like open her mouth too much. Things just stay really well aligned. So those are some definitely good habits that she has. If you listen to when she goes, and after all this time, she goes like, and after, I can't, she's a soprano or like a mezzo or something like that, so I can't make that sound, but she clearly does a glottal attack at the beginning of her phrases that start with vowels, and she does it consistently. And as you all know who've watched this channel, glottal onsets over an extended period of time will lead to vocal nodules, just because it causes so much like aggression for the folds, like, you know, kind of clashing together. It causes too much buildup of pressure underneath the folds. So that's something that I would absolutely say is not a healthy thing that she does. But outside of that, the biggest things that I would say is that she has great pitch acuity as well. At first, I was like going to use this video as a way to look at like pitch correction and see how it affects live singers. But the more I watched this video, the more I found that if it does have pitch correction on it, there's not a lot. This is actually live and pretty well done. There are a lot of live videos on the internet that you find that are full of pitch correction, especially professionally made videos, but it's just a testament to Hayley Williams' talent and her consistency that she doesn't need it here. So this is really good stuff. I'm really impressed with what I see from her.
I'm still.
See that right there? That was like a fry into a glottal. So I don't think the fry itself was that big of a deal, but that she does, that's definitely a problem. So I don't know. I'm always gonna say stay away from the glottal stuff. If you have to do it like once or twice, it's okay. But if you're gonna be doing the glottal stuff, make it very mild, very infrequent, because it will add up and it will cause damage. I don't know much about her as far as her more recent history, but I would not be surprised, and I might be wrong, fans. So please don't get mad at me if I'm wrong. I would not be surprised if she did not have some kind of vocal issue, because I think this video was like 5 or 6 years ago, and I can't imagine someone doing glottal consistently like that for 6 years plus, however long her career was going on before this, and not run into some sort of vocal issues. I would not be surprised at all.
Into you, sing it away. I should be over all the butterflies.
So yeah, so when she went eyes, when she did that, she did this sort of like she kind of did this glottal in between instead of like lining it all up and making it legato, and that was an affect she was trying to create. She was kind of trying to break the line up, which is completely okay, but then she re-attacked the line with a glottal onset. So like it's just a habit that she's developed, and I think that this goes back to her teaching. If you listen to the different singers that Brett Manning has coached, which, for example, Taylor Swift, Keith Urban, Miley Cyrus, Luke Bryan, all these people, if you go and listen to their singing, it's full of glottal stuff, absolutely full of it. So I'm just of the opinion that he probably coaches that. Now, I will say that all of those singers, all those voices, are very good at singing on the voice, and they don't do a lot of the covered things. So perhaps Brett does a very good job of coaching you to sing with your natural voice, like with your speaking voice kind of equivalent, and that's a very good thing. I just think that if you're coaching someone to do glottal attacks, you need to be aware of the damage that it causes. I don't believe that you would coach someone to do that so consistently if you knew that it caused the kind of damage that it caused. I'm not taking away from Brett Manning's coaching. He's obviously coached some of the most famous singers in the world that have been incredibly successful, so he knows what it takes to make a singer successful. But then again, you have this other kind of like ideology, kind of where I'm from, that I'm not so concerned about fame. I'm not so concerned about being a crowd pleaser. I want to make sure that I have a career. So, it goes back and forth. But essentially the idea that I'm trying to get across here is that I think that she has very good general habits. I just think that some of the finer, more remote details definitely could use some refinement. Other than that, it's very good. I mean, if you watch these phrases, her head stays aligned. She'll kind of move a little bit, but she doesn't like stick her head way up. She doesn't turn. She doesn't like do any weird posture stuff. Even though she's sitting down, her posture is quite good, and her tone is very even and consistent. So good stuff.
But I'm into you.
Okay, so that guy, look at that. That is like crazy tension. Like, I think what's happening with him is he's trying to sing in Hayley's tessitura. He's trying to sing up in her range, and I think that it's just a little bit beyond him, so he's having to push really hard, and you can see that tension and that kind of like scrunch up on his face where he's like trying to sing up there. And so, you know, if I were coaching that guy, I don't know who he is, if I were coaching him, I'd tell him to just sing that in falsetto. Like, why not? Why push up there? I don't know. I don't really understand the reasoning behind it, but whatever. Is what it is.
Let 'em wonder how we got this far.
So that vowel fa, whatever, I mean, that's, you know, I find that to be kind of over dramatic. So there's this concept called diphthong, and I'm sure that some of you are familiar with it, but a diphthong is when you have a vowel that actually functions as two. Like if you say the word how, the W is kind of like implied to be a vowel, but the only vowel you're using is an O, and in that case it's ow, how, ow. So it's when you combine two vowels to make one, and I mean that's completely normal in English. We use diphthongs all the time, which is probably why English is the hardest language to sing in. I mean, there's syntax difficulties and things, but the diphthongs and singing the language like and making it sound like the language is extremely difficult for foreign singers. In that case, when she went far, I don't really see the reason to go far. Like I don't see the reason for that diphthong. I mean, maybe it's just a stylistic effect, but you know, from where I come from, that's just a little bit. It's too much work. I mean, if there's like an artistic reason for it, I mean, that's cool, I guess. But I mean, when you make that kind of embouchure move, it just widens everything out, and it just makes you work too hard to keep tone consistent. As far as her larynx stuff, women's vocal tracts function a little bit differently than men's. Their larynxes are generally more malleable. They don't quite get as rigid and hard as men's do. So a lot of times when women create higher pitches, they are utilizing more space in the mouth, in the back of the mouth. And moving the larynx is important for women as well, like getting a little bit of like vocal tract movement. But it's not quite as big of a deal as it is for men, because when men lower their vocal tract, like that's an entire like hard mechanism holding down and kind of like tilting and kind of sitting in place to kind of manipulate the way the sound comes out. Women don't necessarily move in that same way. A lot of times you'll find with women, you will navigate their higher notes by having them move into their head voice and create space with their head voice. And with men don't have to use laryngeal positioning to sing with their head voice either. So I would say that there is a sort of distinct correlation between the way that men use their head voice and women use their head voice, or men use falsetto, women use head voice. So essentially what I'm saying is that women are, when they get up in their higher notes, are going to be looking at more at creating space in the back of the mouth, more so than like trying to move the larynx down and expand the vocal tract that way, whereas men are going to kind of combine the two. I would say that she probably could afford to create a little bit more space, just because the tone sounds a little pushed. It doesn't sound forced, it just sounds a little bit like, it's just a little like kind of straight. It doesn't quite have that robust fullness that I would like to hear. I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's not like she's destroying her voice and doing that, but I guess I have like, anytime I have a student that comes into my studio, I hear their voice and I hear what their voice can be and I hear what their voice is. And so for her, I mean, she's obviously gotten extremely famous and been very successful with her voice as it is, so it's not like she has to make some big, huge refinement, but I guess I could hear there actually being more depth and color to her sound if she raised her soft palate a little more. It's not terrible or anything. It's just me being nitpicky more than anything.
'Cause I don't really need to wonder at all. Yeah, after all this time, I'm still into you.
She's very expressive when she sings as well, which I really like. Like, I like how she kind of reflects the singing through her eyes and through her mannerisms and through kind of a raising of her cheekbones. And it's really easy for people to overdo that, and it affects the way that they sing. Like, it's kind of a subtle art in being expressive with your face and with your eyes, and overdoing it to the point to where it affects the way the sound comes out. And I think she does a really nice balance of keeping everything free and loose and still having that bright kind of affectation in her sound and in her face and in her eyes. So that's very good, and that's a rare talent. That's something that some people work their entire lives and can never quite do. I tell my students typically, like, sing with your eyes. When you're trying to tell someone something, sing with your eyes. Don't try to put it in your face. Usually the face will follow if the eyes are expressing, and it just seems more natural. She just does a really good job of both. It's very nice.
Recount the night that I first met your mother.
Yeah, so that's very much in the speak singing element. That almost on pitch but not really singing it, but still talking the words and being rhythmic, that's definitely like speak singing. That's not what I would consider like the classical approach to singing. I mean, obviously it's a pop song, we're not talking classical here, but when you talk about like the bel canto method, you talk about creating legato and connecting the line together. She's clearly using the voice as a percussive instrument, if that makes any sense. She's trying to be more percussive, and that's cool. I mean, tons of musicians do that. It's been going on for millennia. So I mean, it's just a different way of utilizing the voice rather than trying to follow these like specific refined rules of like singing and bel canto. It's totally fine.
And on the drawback.
Yeah, that I know I keep stopping it on these, but I really want to drive it home. Like, those glottal onsets are destructive in the long run. So if you're a singer, girl or guy, and you are wanting to know something that you can work on, you can probably look at your onsets. The onsets are super important because those are ultimately what determine how aggressively your folds close when you go to sing words that begin with vowels. I have some other videos that kind of use some basic exercises, but if you want to just check your onsets, record yourself and just go E, A, Ah, O, Ooh. Just do that. It doesn't matter if you sing it on a pitch or not. And listen to if you have a at the beginning. But it's something I work on all the time, and sometimes you're going to be better at it than others, but it's definitely something you should pay attention to. If you hear like a pop at the beginning of your vowels, that's a sign of using hard glottal onsets. So something to watch out for, and the way that you can fix that is just by kind of, it's sort of like metaphysical and I guess pseudoscientific, but sort of imagine that the note is coming out of thin air and you're not doing anything to set it up. You just want, because what's happening is the air and the vibration are kind of acting in concert at the same time when the vowel comes out. So you don't want to feel like you're building up underneath like that, like you're coughing. So just think of it like when you speak. You shouldn't create glottal onsets very much when you speak, which is, I think that glottal onsets when you sing are just an affectation that people have just over time added on for whatever reason. Just try that out and pay attention to it. See if you see any results for yourself.
To my house, I told you that I loved you. You felt the weight of the world fall off, and to your favorite.
Gosh, he's killing me. Come on, bro. Like that forehead tension is like, it's indicative of so much pressure and so much tension built up in his throat. Like, you can tell that this singing in this range and in this tessitura is not comfortable for him. It's so simple. All he has to do is just flip it into falsetto. I know we're not talking about Hayley here, but for guys out there, if there's something, if you're trying to sing with a girl, blend with a girl, and you're like, it's way above your range, just use your falsetto. Don't push it, because I promise you, you're going to blend better with her anyway if you use your falsetto, and it's going to save your voice. You're going to get so tired singing the way that he does. I cannot imagine how vocally fatigued this guy is after a concert singing like this.
The start of forever, and after all this time, I'm still into you.
Glottal, 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 glottal. There's glottal throughout the whole phrase. I'm being a broken record, but it's like nails on a chalkboard to a voice teacher.
I should be over all the butterflies, no worse nights. I'm into you.
One thing I really like is that she's got that really bright frontal sound without putting it in her nose. Every time I listen to this, I'm expecting to like hear it in the nose at some point. She doesn't. There's no nasal resonance. It's like all nice frontal but not nasal, which is refreshing. A lot of pop singers love to stuff things in their nose, so it's good. Like, she's really got some good fundamentals. I have no complaints about the way that she vocalizes or the way that she actually produces sound. There are a couple of breathing things we'll get to in a bit, but other than that, I really like her fundamental.
One of those is you and I. But some things just make sense, and even after all this time.
So this whole phrase was actually quite excellent. She did a really nice balance of legato and then the rhythmic stuff. But when she went down to the low register to kind of end the first phrase, she kind of took a little bit of sound off the voice, not to make it sound covered, but just to give it a little bit of like dynamic nuance. Like, it's captivating, honestly. I never thought that I would listen to this kind of music, and I mean, this really isn't my genre a lot of the time. And I hear this, and I'm actually quite captivated by her approach to singing. It's very good. And the fact that she has that little nuance that she can sort of just move through her range, add in elements of legato and the rhythmic stuff, and then have enough control, enough nuance to take a little off the sound to end of phrases. Like, it's keenly expressive. It's very good. Okay, so right there, you'd have to probably go back and listen to it again. But if you heard her breathe, she went. You could hear this like bright upward sounding breath, kind of like that. That's a sign of not having diaphragmatic support underneath. And I hope it comes through in this microphone, but maybe I can show you the difference. So if I breathe like top heavy without getting diaphragmatic support, it sounds like this. Now if I breathe low and use good diaphragmatic support, the breathing sounds like this. So that's the difference between the two. If you hear someone breathe in a way that sounds high, like the pitch of the breathing is high, that means that they probably don't have good diaphragmatic support underneath them. But if you hear breathing that sounds like low pitched, that's probably a sign that the diaphragm is engaging. If you're trying to test it for yourself, actually John Scherer, who's a producer and a guitar teacher at the studio that I work at, also teaches saxophone. And he told me something that, I mean, I've learned how to do diaphragmatic breathing many years ago, but hearing him explain it in a way was actually really helpful for me at teaching it to other people. If you breathe and you feel cold air when you breathe, that's usually a sign that your diaphragm is involved. If you breathe in and you don't feel cold air in your throat, you probably didn't get a nice low diaphragmatic breath. So maybe that helps some of you guys.
Not a day goes by that I'm not into you. I should be over all the butterflies.
Yeah, even on this more expressive part, her face doesn't tense up. She doesn't create tension. Like, that's so good. So many of these pop singers that you run into have like this crazy tension in their necks and in their faces, and it just looks like everything's pushing. But she's not. Everything just seems very natural. It's excellent. I mean, she is, from this video alone, I mean, I haven't listened enough to her to be able to, like, I don't know, objectively analyze everything she's ever done, but just from this video alone, I feel like she is, you know, obviously she's not a bel canto operatic singer, but in her realm of music, she's probably the most technically sound singer I've heard in, you know, to come around the past 15 years or so, at least for women. For men, there are a couple. The guy that sings with the Gaithers, David Phelps. David Phelps has pretty good technique. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. Kurt Elling, the jazz singer, has pretty good technique, although he uses a lot of forehead tension. But she's absolutely a very technically sound singer, save for some of the high breathing and the glottal stuff. Everything else, like the way that she phonates and creates sound, is quite excellent. I mean, it's really impressive.
And baby, even on the worst nights, I'm into you.
Now, on that little melisma, on that little thing that she did, I think that she could afford to have a little bit more space. It sounded a little pushed. I mean, the notes were perfectly fine. It was clean. The legato was nice, but I think that it would have had a even more engaging affect if she just raised her soft palate a little bit more. Just create a little bit more space in her mouth. I mean, it sounded great, but, you know, again, I'm being nitpicky, so that's what I do. I'm a voice teacher. Give me a break.
I'm into you. Let 'em wonder how we got this far.
So on that high note, she did get a little, you could see a little tension, like she winced a little bit, and that if she had just, again, raised the soft palate, create a little bit of space, I don't think she would have had that problem.
'Cause I don't really need to wonder at all. Yeah, after all this time, I'm still into you. I'm still into you. I'm still into you.
Okay, well, very nice. Some of her vowel choices at the end I could have stood to, you know, alter, I guess you could say. But again, as I said earlier, I think that a lot of that is idiomatic of the style of singing. And it seems like she's kind of trying to combine the pop with like the punk kind of thing. And I mean, so that sort of affectation is totally fine. I mean, it's not destructive. It's just, I guess I come from a school of learning where everything follows IPA. Everything follows like the precise vowels that you're supposed to sing. So I've just sort of learned to sing from that perspective. I mean, it doesn't bother me to hear other people do otherwise. That's just the like super perfectionist, like everything is like a certain way kind of me coming out. So it's not a critique on her. It's just a matter of personal preference, really. Anyway, that's it. She's excellent. I hope that this was insightful and informative to some of you. The Fry Register thing, you know, there's a big debate on it. Look it up. I mean, there are a lot of interesting perspectives, and my opinion is pretty much irrelevant on it. But I do think that it is worth the further study to determine just how destructive the fry register is to the female vocal mechanism. Anyway, yeah, that's it. So if you want to request a video, I see all of your requests in your comments. I have so many from the comments that I just can't get to them all. I mean, there's no way. So I use the Patreon to kind of like filter. But I still look, and I'm still going to do some of the requests that you guys give. I just have to like pace myself. And having a patron request video kind of makes it easy. I can just say, okay, well, this is up next. So if you do want to directly request a video for me to analyze, subscribe to my Patreon. The link's going to be down in the description. I do offer voice lessons. I've actually gotten several voice students from this channel, and I would love to have some more, so feel free to reach out to me. Message me here. I'll put my email address in the description. Please message me. My rates are very fair, I believe, and I love working with singers. I love working with new voices, so I'd love to hear from you. Anyway, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. You guys know how the YouTube thing works. We are on the path to 1,000. We're like probably going to hit 600, so let's get there. Let's get to 1,000. I'm ready for it. My body's ready. All right, you guys take care. Bye.